Hey guys, Brian from Boas here. There are lots of misconceptions and misinformation about boa breeding out there. I often see beginning boa breeders making mistakes based on this erroneous information. Today I'm going to count down the top 10 mistakes that beginning boa breeders make. So if you're starting to get into boa breeding, pay attention because you don't want to make these mistakes. So I thought I'd grab this guy. This is a Suriname Redtail. This is actually a Florida Redtail bloodline crossed with a Tudahope bloodline from Brian Abramson of the Florida Redtails fame. And this guy was actually, I think, the only boa that I brought into the collection in the last year. I managed to get him. He was being rehomed, and I'm really glad that I got him because he's such a beautiful animal. I actually call this guy Mr. Pink, one of the few animals in my collection that has a name. So besides his beautiful appearance, he's also super chill and laid back, which is why he's great for these videos. And this guy is about 3 years old, so hopefully he should be ready for breeding probably in another 2 years or so. So on to the countdown. So the first mistake that beginners often make, and I've made this a lot myself, is being overly optimistic about their odds of success. So it's human nature. We all want to believe that we're going to be successful. We don't enter projects thinking that we're not going to be successful. If we did, we wouldn't even enter the projects. So a lot of people will have this expectation about the odds of success of their project, and even though it hasn't worked for other people, and there's a reason why the certain type of boa is so hard to find because it's really not easy to breed, they think they're going to be different and it's going to work out for them. So I certainly hope this is the case. We all want our projects to be successful, but we also have to bear in mind that there's a pretty good chance that a given project won't be successful, at least not in the time frame that we envision. It might take longer. We might take 2 or 3 tries until ultimately getting success. We may have to swap in new breeding stock. But in general, breeding boas is not quite as easy as you might think it is. So this is one thing to keep in mind, and of course we want to plan for success, but also bear in mind that you might not be successful. The second mistake that beginning boa breeders often make is not specializing and spreading their projects too thin. So you might think, well, I'm a boa breeder, this is a specialty, I'm not breeding pythons or lizards or tortoises. But within boas itself, there's a huge range of variety. Lots of different locality boas, lots of different morph boas, lots of different projects to work with. So if you try to breed everything in boas, you're probably not going to be able to do this unless you have a huge amount of time, space, and money. Especially when you start, you really want to focus on a sub-niche. If you're going to breed morphs, you probably just want to pick a few genes to work with and specialize on combos with those genes. If you want to breed locality boas, you might want to breed just one type. For example, a certain type of a subspecies of boa like longicauda or amorali, or you might want to specialize in true redtails but focus on Surinames and Peruvians, or you might want to focus on dwarf boas. The point is, you're not going to try to do it all, certainly not from the beginning. And then once you build up success in one sub area, you can add projects from another area. One reason for this is you really want to have a decent breeding group in order to assure success. Just having a pair of each animal that you want to breed is probably not a very good plan for success, because if they don't breed for whatever reason, you don't have any alternates to fall back on. So you probably want to try to put together a breeding group of something like 3 or 4 of each sex, from each different project. In some cases it's going to be really hard to find 3 or 4 animals from different bloodlines. You might just have to deal with a couple bloodlines. But the point is, you want as good of a breeding group for each project as possible, rather than spreading too thin and just having a pair of each project. The third mistake that beginners often make is to ignore the market and to breed a type of boa that's not really in demand. So, ultimately we need to find homes for our baby boas. So even if you have a project you're really stoked about, really passionate about, if ultimately you're not going to be able to find homes for the babies, it doesn't make sense to breed that type of boa. There's plenty of boas out there that need homes, and we don't want to contribute to the unwanted and excess boa population. So please don't breed a boa if you're not sure that you're going to be able to find homes for the babies. So you should have a pretty good idea by doing your market research what types of boas are in demand, and you want to focus on projects that are going to be pretty easy to find homes because the babies are going to be in demand. The next mistake that beginners often make is kind of the opposite of that, and that is only breeding because of the commercial demand. So people will look and they'll say, well, this particular project, look at how much money these boas are selling for, look how in demand they are. And even if they have no ambition or passion for the particular project, they just see the dollar sign. So this is a big mistake. Breeding a boa for the money is really the last reason that you should get into a project. So if you're going to breed a boa, make sure that you're passionate, you like the animals, and ultimately if the commercial demand dries up, you would not have a problem with keeping the babies as long as you need to, even years at a time before they find new homes. Thought I'd grab another boa for you guys to look at. This is a Crawl Key dwarf boa male. This is a 5-year-old holdback male born here in 2017. And he's just reached breeding size. This is his first year to go into breeding trials. So with any luck, some of his babies will be born sometime in the summer of 23. So on to the, returning to the countdown, the next error that beginning boa breeders make a lot, and I see this quite a bit, is they try to acquire way many females than males. And they have this idea, they have this super stud male boa. They're just going to rotate from cage to cage. He's going to service 6, 8, maybe even a dozen females at a time. And then all the babies are going to pop out, a few months later. And this is, people do this with morphs especially because they can buy like a really expensive morph boa male, like a Superfire or, IMG or something like that. And they figure that it can service quite a few normal females, and then the normal females will bear all these really valuable morph boa offspring. With boas, unfortunately, a lot of the males are just not great breeders. They're just not really aggressive breeders, and they really have to put a lot of attention into the female until the copulation occurs. It might be weeks or even months of courtship before the mating actually occurs. So if you have a male that you spread too thin, chances are you're not going to get any successful babies. And then you might even get females with slugs, and the slugs are really hard for the female to deliver. They take a lot out of the female. Sometimes they even result in complications that can lead to the death of the female. So the last thing you want is your females to all slug out. As a general rule for each breeding project, you want to acquire at least one male for every 1.5 females. And in many cases you want a 1-to-1 ratio. So you have one male for every female. And so when you think about it, you're going to breed the females every other year, give them a year off. Males can breed every year if they're in decent shape, but you always want to have at least one male for every female. In many cases, you want to have 2 males for every female. Putting a second male in there will really stimulate the breeding and increase your odds of success. In addition, sometimes you might want to give a male a year off, just to recover from the previous year of breeding. And you'll find that you'll never have too many males. I find that a lot of beginners, they want to buy just female babies from me. And so you really need to buy at least as many males as females if you really want to have a good shot of success in breeding boas. So the next mistake is relying too much upon the experience of others. So I've noticed a lot, people will reach out to me with questions, which is great. But a lot of these are questions I can't really answer because it really depends on your particular situation. In addition, a lot of the information online and in books is just either completely wrong or it just doesn't apply to your situation. So it's always a good idea to use, previously written experiences from others as a good starting point. But ultimately, you're going to have to figure things out for yourself because your situation is different from everyone else's situation, and things are not going to work quite the same way. In addition, I think a lot of people don't really know what they're talking about, to put it bluntly. Even people who are experienced breeders, I often hear people making these claims and as though it's 100% solid and there's scientific evidence backing up what they say. And the truth is, most of knowledge in boa breeding is anecdotal. Something seems to have worked for one person, and then somebody heard about it and they said, well, that's the secret to breeding boas. And then it became accepted as this is the absolute knowledge, slash science of boa breeding. But the truth is, there's a lot that's really not really that well known, and a lot of it is luck. So you can't really be overly confident in what someone else tells you. It's really a lot better to figure things out for yourself. The seventh mistake that beginning boa breeders make is neglecting the other skills they're going to need to be successful as a boa breeder, besides just producing the baby boas. And so there's a whole range of skills. I actually did a video on this, so check that out if you're interested. But producing the baby boas is really just the beginning. You're going to have to find homes for them and connect with people, ship them out to the new buyers in order, to complete the full circle of boa breeding. And so it's never too early to start this. You don't need to have baby boas on the ground in order to develop these skills. The first skill is just connecting with people via social media or clubs or forums, things like that. You want to develop a pretty good network of people interested in boas. And these are people that you can connect with, and you can put out there the information that you're working with a certain type of boa and that you're hopeful that in a few years you're going to have babies. And then you can meet up with other people, you can exchange information via social media, you can email them, you can, in some cases talk to them on the phone. But just to get the word out there that you're working with a certain type of boa, and to connect with other people that are interested in that boa, they can, give you information and then ultimately serve as new homes for the babies that you're going to produce. Another really critical skill for boa breeders is photography, and I often see that a lot of boa breeders are not that strong in this area, but you really should be able to take really decent quality photos of your boas that show them off the best. Because if you have a really nice boa but you can't take a good picture of it, you're probably not going to be all that successful selling them. I'm amazed by the fact that sometimes I have a boa that maybe doesn't look all that great to me. It's kind of an average boa, but I take a really nice picture of it and it's a really nice pose, and people are just saying how amazing it looks. And a lot of it is because the boa just looks good in that picture. So it's really important in order to sell boas to take good pictures of them. And photography is a very useful skill that you can start to develop, certainly before you have the babies on the ground. Thought I'd grab another boa, and this is a Hog Island Boa. This is a Sears bloodline female, born here in 2018. So she is probably about at least a year, maybe 2 years away from breeding, but has been putting on some nice size. She'll probably put on another maybe foot and a half, but just a really nice light pinkish looking animal. Okay, so back to the countdown. So the next few mistakes are for people that have already bred the boas, but maybe they've had their first litter, they're really excited, and they might make some of the following mistakes. The first mistake that they might do after their initial success is overextending on new projects. So they might think, well, they're getting a little bit of money back, and they've been successful breeding one type of boa, so now they're going to expand, they're going to get a whole bunch of new boas to add as new projects. And of course, this isn't really a mistake if you have things under control and you've planned well, and obviously you can apply what you've learned breeding the first boas to your new projects. But it's a mistake if you take on too many projects and you don't account for the fact that they're going to get bigger, they're going to take up more space, more food, more time. And also, you probably want to save some holdbacks of your own. So you're going to need time and space and bandwidth in order to raise up those holdbacks. So although it's certainly great to expand once you've had your initial successes, you don't want to expand too much, past what you're able to handle. And so the next related mistake is that sometimes people, when they finally have some money coming back after all these years of raising up their boas for breeding, they might view it as found money, almost like monopoly money, and then they might just blow it on things that they wouldn't have bought ordinarily. So sometimes people might buy like really expensive boa cages. People might buy really expensive morph boas that normally they wouldn't have gotten into that project. They tend to see the money coming in as almost like found money, like they won the lottery or something. But really, once you get the money, this has taken you many, many years of planning and luck in order to get that money. So you should not view this as just money that you can just blow. You really want to think about what you're going to do with the money, how you're going to spend it on your breeding group in order to ensure future success. And you don't want to just buy things that you wouldn't have bought ordinarily. So don't take that first money that comes in and blow it, because there's a chance that the following year might not be as good and you might need that money just to keep your operation going. So now we've reached the last mistake that beginners sometimes make in my list of mistakes that beginning boa breeders sometimes make. And so that one is simply people give up too soon. And I've seen this a lot. People will spend a lot of time getting a project going, and they have this idea that, the animals are going to be ready to breed in 5 years, and then they're going to get the babies, and they're going to, all the work is going to pay off. And then the time comes, they pair them up, and they don't get the babies. Sometimes people will just give up at that point. They'll sell off the breeding stock. Sometimes people will get out of boas entirely, if their initial try to breed them is not successful. So you don't want to give up too soon. Very often a pairing will not be successful the first time you pair it up. You may need to pair it up again next year, or even the next 2 years to get success. And you might have to change things up a bit, cycle your animals differently, vary the breeding groups, use multiple males, for example, or do something a little bit different in order for success. But don't just give up the first time that you're not successful, because there's a lot about boa breeding that you can't really plan for and that it's unpredictable. So you really have to stick with it if you want to be successful in this type of endeavor. Okay, so that was my countdown of 10 mistakes that beginning boa breeders will often make. One thing I didn't even touch upon, which is going to be the subject of a future video, is whether you should breed boas to begin with. Okay? Because not everybody should be breeding boas. And just because there's this kind of idea out there in the boa hobby that breeding is what people should aspire to, this really isn't the case for everybody. So stay tuned for an upcoming video. I'm going to talk about whether you should breed boas or not, and what some of the pros and cons are of breeding boas. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your boas.